Hello and welcome to a live deprogram with Keri Smith. I'm your host, Keri. I hope you had a great Thanksgiving break. I got a message from one of my British friends that said, "Have a happy Thanksgiving, you traitors," which was funny. Um, but I hope you had some good time off. I had good time off. I was going to make a joke and say I took a week off because the president of France had taken a hit out on me, but I didn't know if everybody would get that joke. That's Candace Owens took a week off, and she said it's because she has proof that Macron and the U.S. government and I don't know who else is involved. Oh, an Israeli assassin. There's a French assassin and an Israeli assassin and Egyptian planes. And anyway, that there's a hit out on her, and so she took a week off, and it happened to be around Thanksgiving, which I thought that was just such a funny lie. Anyway, I was off for Thanksgiving, and I hope you were as well. And we had a great time, saw family, and you know, traveled to Lubbock, which was great, and then went to my husband had some shows over the weekend in Hill Country, Texas, which is a beautiful part of Texas. And he and his violinist played at the Christmas and Comfort celebration, which happens every year. They play there. It's so fun. There's a lot of great little towns in Texas, but if you haven't visited Comfort, you should visit. We even tell people if you're visiting from out of state and you're coming to Texas, Comfort is wonderful, and not a lot of people know about it. It's like Fredericksburg, but not as many people. So I'm just telling you guys, and they have the best Christmas celebration every year. It's like they shut down all the streets. There's all kinds of fun vendors and cookies and cakes and coffees, and people dress up and they dress their dogs up, and then they have music. They have different stages with music, and I saw some people yodeling on one music stage, and then they shut all of that down. All the vendors clear out, and they do a big small town Christmas parade every year. And then after the parade, they do fireworks. It's just they do everything. It's the best. So comfort is comforting. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So we did that, and then got back, and I'll just tell you guys briefly, coming up this week, I'm not sure if I'm going to stick to the regular schedule because I'm pre-recording 2 in-person interviews. We've got new microphones, um, and we've got 2 new cameras, and we're going to use those and create 2 sit-down interviews that I'm very excited about. And depending on how those go and the timing, I'm not sure if we're going to stick to the regular schedule this week, but I'll let you guys know. Anyway, that's what's coming up. So, I hope somebody says random comment blocking already. I don't know what's happening. I'm not blocking anything. YouTube randomly does not share some comments. That even happens to me and the mods. So, if that is happening to you guys, let me know in the chat. Yeah, sometimes that happens. So, today I wanted to talk about the big news. There's a lot of big news, but the news story that caught my attention the most over the weekend was the FDA. The FDA has now admitted that the COVID vaccine, I put that in quotes because it's not a vaccine by any definition that we previously knew. It doesn't do what vaccines do. It doesn't prevent you from getting it. Remember when they lied to us over and over and over? Rachel Maddow, all these media people said, if you get the vaccine, you won't get COVID. That was a lie. Then they walked that back. Then they said, well, it'll prevent you from spreading it at least to other people. That was a lie. They walked that back. Then they said, oh, well, at least it'll make the symptoms will be less severe. They kept lying over and over. So I put that in quotes, vaccine. But the COVID vaccine, FDA has now admitted, caused the deaths of children. They say no less than 10, and they're being very conservative with that estimate, with that number. We're gonna read the memo. All of the mainstream news, I'm surprised, but the mainstream news appears to be covering it. You can if you're a leftist and you're hate watching, you can go read your favorite leftist corporate mainstream news. CNN is reporting it. We're gonna pull up the CNN article actually, because I know that a lot of leftists won't read anything unless it comes from their cult media. So we're gonna read what your cult media is saying about it. But I'm shocked that the mainstream media is covering it. The FDA is now vowing to change the vaccine approval process as a result of this. That's what should be done at the very least. At the very least, we should be charging people. They knew what they were doing. Let's start with Fauci. There should be consequences, legal consequences to these lies and to the way that they forced and coerced this on us, on Americans and on the children of Americans. So, um, let me address one comment really quickly in the chat because this is not true, and I'll just get this out of the way. Bros and Bros says, "Your real opposition is no longer the left, Keri, it's the far right, or what you would call the woke right." Oh, actually, I don't disagree. It's both, though. The woke right and the woke left, they're no different. They're both evil. They're both pushing leftism. They're both pushing socialism, Marxism, communism. On the ones that claim to be on the right are also saying they're pushing fascism, but they're pretty much the same. They're both identitarians. They're both collectivists. They don't stand for liberty. They stand for collectivism, identity-based collectivism, and it's the same devil. It's basically like the devil's been selling this one trick, woke left, for a long time. People wake up to what it is and start leaving it, and we've made a lot of cultural successes. We've had a lot of cultural successes at showing what a fraud woke ideology is, and so then the devil pops up over here and says, "Oh, well, I've got a new trick now." It's the same trick. It's just now over here appealing to you over here. It's the same trick. Yes, I agree. It's totalitarianism of some sort. Um And ADL says, "I'm sorry if my comments in the previous video put you on the spot." They didn't. I don't remember them exactly, so my apologies, but that means they didn't put me on the spot. It was fine, whatever we were talking about. Um, and then he says, "Picture and sound are not syncing. If you guys are having that problem, let me know." I apologize. Okay, so we're gonna look at this article. Randy Wallen. Hey, Randy, for with a super chat for $10 says, and Alex Berenson was all over this stuff very early on, was fortunate to find his reporting early during the COVID-19 nightmare. Yes, he was, and he's still all over it. He's been great. Okay. People are saying that if your video and audio are not synced, you should refresh your video. Probably try that. Okay, here we go. We're going to look at the CNN article, leftists. Let's read it. The headline, FDA official plans to change vaccine approval process, claiming that COVID-19 shots caused child deaths. A senior Food and Drug Administration official on Friday, FDA official on Friday, said the agency will change its vaccine approval process, alleging that COVID-19 vaccination resulted in the deaths of 10 children. Now, I just want to point something out if you're on the left and you're watching. This is something that your cult media does all of the time is when they do report on facts that are not in alignment with your cult narrative and the narrative that they've been pushing, the crap they've been pushing on you, the propaganda they've been pushing on you for years. They will make sure they take every opportunity to put alleged in there, and they'll do their due diligence and say this person claims at the FDA alleged deaths, right? That this person claims. Now they don't do that when it aligns with their cult narrative. Have you noticed? They don't do it at all. You should start looking to see when is it that they're trying to cause you to be skeptical and when they don't want you to be skeptical at all. It's a big difference. So anyway, let's continue. In an internal memo obtained by CNN, Dr. Vinay Prasad, the FDA's chief. So who is this guy? They say up above he's an official. Well, here he is. He's the FDA's chief medical and scientific officer and the director of the Center for Biologics, the Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research. He said, quote, this is his quote, healthy young children who faced tremendously low risk of death were coerced at the behest of the Biden administration via school and work mandates to receive a vaccine that could result in death. I just want to pause here to say something. If you are on the left and this is new to you and shocking to you, this is not news. We knew this at the time. There were scientists, doctors, well-renowned scientists and doctors who were saying, look at the numbers, look at the data. Children are at very, very, very low risk of catching COVID. And if they catch COVID, they're at very low risk of death. They are not the cohort that is at risk. And do you know what happened to those doctors and scientists who were trying to raise the alarm bells and tell parents you should be very cautious about what you choose to do? They were censored at the behest of the Biden administration. We know this. It's not just us assuming. We know this because of the Twitter files, which you probably don't know about. Independent journalists were allowed to go into all of Twitter's data, all of their internal communications. When Elon Musk bought it, he opened everything up to them, and they were able to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt all of the internal communications that the Twitter staff, they were having meetings, repeated meetings, regular meetings with Biden's three-letter agencies, with the FBI, with the Department of Homeland Security, the CIA. They were sitting down and meeting with these government officials who were advising them on what and who to block and what and who to censor, what news stories, what doctors, what scientists to censor. Now, those of us who weren't in the cult during COVID, we knew this was happening by simple observation. We could see it. We were seeing people blocked and banned right and left. And it was happening to us. We were having posts removed. We were getting strikes. We were being told our channel was going to be taken down. We were given 30-day blackouts before we could return to social media. We knew it was happening through experience and observation, which are tools of science, by the way. So we knew it was happening. But then with the Twitter files, with the release of the Twitter files and all the journalists who did the digging and put it together in easy to digest news reports for us, then we saw the confirmation that, yes, here it is out in the open. It was happening. So if you didn't hear it, if you didn't know that doctors and scientists were telling us, children, look at the science, look at the data, children are at low risk of death from COVID, then you should consider broadening the array of media sources that you turn to. You should consider stepping outside the cult media and listening to some other sources, and maybe stop sheltering yourself so much. But we knew this at the time. Healthy young children face tremendously low risk of death from COVID. And yet, the Biden administration, the cult media, the corporate media, political figures, entertainers, there were billions of dollars spent to coerce parents and force parents to give their children this untested experimental shot. I say experimental. Why? We were saying this back then. Why? Because it had not been around long enough for there to be longitudinal testing. There was only very short-term testing. There was not time for longitudinal testing. By definition, that makes it experimental. That's what it makes it. This is science. All of you guys back then who were telling us, trust the science, and you really meant trust Fauci, trust these government clowns, trust censorship. That's really what you meant. Science requires time. It requires transparency, not censorship, and it requires reproducible results. Many trials with reproducible results. So, we'll continue. Prasad, this is the FDA official, did not provide details about the deaths or how the FDA came to that conclusion, but pointed to an initial analysis that examined 96 deaths and linked 10. By the way, he said no fewer than 10. He said at least 10 we have confirmed were caused by it. I'm going to read you what he actually said after we read CNN's propagandized reporting on it. So he came to the conclusion. He pointed to an initial analysis that examined 96 deaths and linked 10 to the COVID-19 vaccination. He also claimed that COVID-19, quote, was never highly lethal for children, end quote. That's true. And that the effects of it, quote, are comparable to respiratory viruses for which there are not annual vaccines. Quote, I have no doubt that many vaccines have saved millions of lives globally, and many have benefits that far exceed the risk. But vaccines are like any other medical product, he said. The right drug given to the right patient at the right time is great, but the same drug can be inappropriately given, causing harm. Yes. Prasad said, as a result of the FDA analysis, the agency will adopt a new approval process for vaccines that will require more evidence of their safety and value before they can be marketed. Imagine that. Imagine doing your job. Among the changes would be stricter requirements for authorization of vaccines used for pregnant women and trials for pneumonia vaccines that will need to prove the shots reduce disease instead of showing that the vaccine produces enough antibodies to fight the illness. This here, by the way, pregnant women, that was another category. I had videos taken down by YouTube for even alluding to the reports that were coming out from pregnant women with their adverse experiences after they took the COVID shot. So that's another study they need to do. Quite frankly, the FDA needs to study that. What effects did it have on pregnancy? What effects did it have on women's cycle, their menstrual cycle? We know through anecdotal evidence, that's people sharing their experience, countless people sharing their experience, that it had some negative effects on some people. I would like to see them study that. Hopefully, we're at a time where you're allowed to say this now on YouTube without your video being taken down and given a strike and told that you can't stream again for 30 days because you talked about science and you asked questions, which is part of science. The agency will also, quote, revise the annual flu vaccine framework, Prasad said, and will reappraise safety and be honest in vaccine labels. Well, that would be wonderful. I'm highly skeptical that this will happen, but that would be wonderful. Although Prasad's memo did not provide details about how the process would change, it could require larger studies that take longer to complete. Wow, CNN. Science takes time. Imagine that. You need to be able to reproduce the results. You need enough time. You need to be able to do a longitudinal study where you see all of the adverse effects so that parents are fully informed. Especially when the government is pressuring them, coercing them, and in some cases forcing them. It said this would slow the process significantly. Great. In the memo, Prasad said he's open to discussion about the changes, but said such debates should be internal to the FDA. Quote, some staff may not agree with these core principles and operating principles, he wrote, before urging those staffers to submit their resignation letters. This is fire. This is great. It's like, he's basically like, hey, look, if you don't like the scientific process, like, you need to resign. Get out of here. We're going back to science. Get out. Goodbye. You don't belong at the FDA. That's awesome. CNN has reached out to the FDA and the Department of Health and Human Services, which oversees the agency, for comment. Friday's memo is in line with arguments long made by HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who has repeatedly raised doubts about the effectiveness of vaccines and previously founded the anti vaccine group Children's Health Defense. As the HHS Secretary, Kennedy has slashed funding for mRNA vaccine development. Thank you. Removed all members of the Vaccine Advisory Committee at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, and directed the CDC to change its website to include false look, this here you go. Here's CNN editorializing. To include false claims, it says, that link autism and vaccines. Notice how they didn't put an allegedly there. They didn't say include allegedly false claim. They didn't give you that. They didn't tell you, leftists, oh, you should be skeptical about this. We're telling you they're false. Interesting. The CDC's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, handpicked by Kennedy, is set to meet next week to discuss the childhood vaccine schedule and the timing of the hepatitis B vaccine, according to a draft agenda of the meeting. The rest of this is about Hep B, so I'm gonna stop there, and we're gonna look at the actual memo that CNN is talking about. Wouldn't it be great if they would link to original sources? That's another thing that the cult media never does, is they just tell you what to think. They never give you the source material so you can read it and judge for yourself. They never link, especially when they're lying about something Trump said. Like, they never give you the link to the speech. They just want you to trust them that this is what he said. And they also, with him, they rarely put things in quotes because he didn't say what they're saying. They're summarizing what he said for you, right? Yeah, pros and pros. Never change, mainstream media. Never change. So, I wanted to share a couple things with you. Jeffrey Tucker at FEE, he shared the entire memo, and Brett Weinstein, I just wanted to share his commentary on it. He said the FDA now recognizes that the COVID vaccines killed healthy children who were in no danger from COVID itself. That's the tip of a gigantic iceberg. Bioweapon leaks, science fraud, regulatory capture, a global coup by the public health bureaucracy against traditional medicine, the debut of a lethal new vaccine platform, shredding of the First Amendment. That's what happened when the Biden admin met with Twitter and Facebook repeatedly and put pressure on them and told them which doctors and scientists to censor. That's shredding of the First Amendment, because the government's doing it, and they're just doing it through corporations. Shredding of the First Amendment and robotic pens used to brazenly pardon criminal masterminds. You know, remember that? You know what he's talking about? Biden and his auto pen pardoned Fauci for any crimes he has committed, even if they haven't been discovered yet. Do you remember that? Biden pardoned Fauci for any future crimes and any crimes he committed that haven't been discovered yet. Is that sinking in, leftists? Why would he need to do that? Why would you pre-pardon someone who has not been brought up on charges? You're pre-pardoning them. Pretty crazy. It should tell you a lot. It should tell you a lot. So, as I mentioned, the Jeffrey Tucker shared the whole memo, and then he also shared a link so we don't have to look at it in screenshots. This is the FDA memo, and it's been reprinted here at the Brownstone Institute. This is called the FDA memo that shakes the world. This came out on November 29th. Over the last November weekend of November 2025, a memo circulated throughout the FDA. the Federal Food and Drug Administration, that might well trigger the entire unraveling of the US vaccine program with a focus on the mandated COVID shot in particular. The author is Dr. Vinay Prasad, who was a moderate critic during COVID, but has become ferocious since his appointment as the head of the Center for there's that word again. I can't say it's almost like I can't say that other word, anyway. Biologics, the Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research of the FDA. Of this memo, ACIP member and scientist Robert Malone has written, quote, "I am stunned, gobsmacked by this letter below. The significance and importance of this letter in the context of US and global vaccine policy cannot be overestimated. This is a revolution, the likes of which I never expected to see in my lifetime." Now, if you're on the left, you may not know who Dr. and scientist Robert Malone is, the guy who said this. Robert Malone actually is the creator of the mRNA vaccine. He's the one who developed the technology for mRNA vaccine. And you may not know who he is because he was one of the biggest and most vocal critics. He was one of these scientists and doctors we are talking about who were censored at the behest of the Biden administration. Our federal government sent people to big social companies, sent them to corporations like Facebook and Twitter. We don't only have the Twitter files to prove this and prove all of their internal meetings and what they were telling these companies to censor and who to censor and what to take down. We also know this because Mark Zuckerberg, the head of Facebook, testified about it. He admitted it and testified about it. Why don't you know about this? It's your responsibility. You're an adult. I say this, I know that you don't know about it because I talk to a lot of leftists in person, offline, at events. I talked to some leftists this weekend. I talked to people at an event a couple weeks ago. Adult people who, when I mentioned the Twitter file, said, "What's that?" I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh. It's just funny because we live in an age where information is at your fingertips, and yet there are adults who have very strong opinions that they think are theirs. They think these are their opinions about things they know nothing about, and it's their fault. Yes, it's the fault of, like I said, billions of dollars spent on propaganda and censorship. It's the fault of the government. It's the fault of the media, the corporations. It's the fault of all of, like, the entertainers, all of them who push this propaganda and push censorship. But ultimately, the buck stops with you. It stops with me. We're adults. So, I hope that if this is a shock to you that the FDA is admitting that the COVID vaccine caused the deaths of children, if it is a shock to you, one thing that happens is when we learn as humans, if when we learn that we've been tricked, that we've been conned, that someone lied to us, that someone hid things from us or pushed lies, pushed propaganda and censored and tried to make sure we didn't have all the facts. When we learn that, there's two directions we can go. We can continue in denial and with the narrative we've been sold. We can put our head in the sand and we can live in lies and we can choose that because psychologically it feels less uncomfortable. And I know people who choose that. They choose to go back into the matrix. Like in that movie, The Matrix, when the guy chooses to go back in, he chooses to live in lies because the truth is too brutal. There are people who choose that. You can choose that route. When you find out someone's lied to you, you can live in denial. You can pretend like it's not true. You can continue buying more lies. You can get deeper in it because the psychological pain and trauma is too much for you. You can go that route. Or the other route is you can acknowledge that someone made a fool of you, that someone took advantage of you, someone stole from you, they lied to you, they cheated you, they tricked you, they used you, they manipulated you. You can accept that that happened, and then you can forgive yourself because that was an evil thing someone did to you. You didn't do it. That was an evil thing they did to you. You can forgive yourself for buying into that crap, and you can move forward in truth you can learn from it with a greater awareness of evil and how evil operates, with a determination not to be taken advantage of again. You can move forward with this new knowledge that you've acquired through this lesson. There are some things we only learn through bad teachers. There are certain lessons that we learn in life only through evil people doing evil things to us. You can be grateful that you learned this lesson in a painful way from an evil teacher, and you can move forward with the determination not to let it happen to you again. And not to be a part of something like that again, not to be used and manipulated like that again, taken advantage of again. So if this news is shocking to you, I hope you choose that path, the path of truth. It seems like the harder path because, like as I said, there's a bit of a this for some people psychologically that's too much to deal with. The truth, reality that they were conned, that they were used, that they were manipulated, that's really hard to admit to. And then you usually go through this period of wondering what is true and what other lies you've believed, and that can be psychologically devastating. But it's the better path. It's the better path in every way. So, yes, Eclectic Company says, like the aphorism, "Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, won't get fooled again," or something like that. Yeah, exactly. So let's continue. We're gonna look at this. This is the FDA memo that CNN and others, even the cult media, are being forced to report on. So it's reprinted below in full. So this is the memo. It's long. I'm not gonna pause very much because it's long, so we're gonna get through it. Dear Team Cyber, I am writing to report that OBPV, the Office of Biostatistics and Pharmacovigilance. There you go. That's your word for the day. That's my word for the day. The career staff have found that at least 10 children have died after and because of receiving COVID-19 vaccination. These deaths are related to vaccination, likely, probable, possible attribution made by staff. That number is certainly an underestimate due to underreporting and inherent bias in attribution. This safety signal has far-reaching implications for Americans, the U.S. pandemic response, and the agency itself, which I wish to discuss here. I also want to address some frequent objections. Prior to joining the U.S. FDA, the FDA commissioner closely followed reports of vaccine-induced myocarditis, unlike the COVID virus, which has a steep age gradient, being at least 1,000 times more likely to kill an 80-year-old than an 8-year-old. Myocarditis appeared to have the opposite pattern. Young, healthy boys and men, those least likely to experience bad COVID outcomes, bore the greatest risk of myocarditis. The risk was as high as 200 to 330 per million doses given in the highest risk demographic groups. Notably, the US FDA and CDC were not the first to recognize the safety signal. Instead, the Israelis were, and worse, in May of 2021, then CDC Director Rochelle Walensky stated, quote, "We have not seen a signal, and we've actually looked intentionally for the signal in the over 200 million doses we've given," end quote. She lied. Many felt this statement was dishonest and manipulative. The commissioner, senior advisor Tracy Beth Hogue, myself and colleagues demonstrated that COVID-19 boosters and the accompanying mandates by colleges were on balance harmful to young men in a widely discussed peer-reviewed paper in 2022. Like many academic physicians, we felt the FDA and CDC abdicated their duty to the American people. These agencies did not quickly attempt mitigation strategies such as spacing doses apart, lowering doses, omitting doses among those with prior COVID-19. Worse, the FDA delayed acknowledgement of the safety signal until after it could extend marketing authorization to younger boys 12 through 15. That's insane. This is described by the commissioner and I in JAMA. Had the acknowledgement come early, these younger boys, who likely did not require COVID-19 vaccination, may have chosen to avoid the products. In the summer of 2025, Dr. Hogue began investigating VAERS reports of children who had died after administration of the COVID-19 vaccine. By late summer, she had concluded that there were, in fact, deaths. In fact, a fact this agency had never publicly admitted. Dr. Hogue organized a small meeting to discuss these deaths with the Office of Vaccines Research and Review and OBPV stakeholders. The slides she presented, emails she sent, and distorted firsthand reports was shared with media outlets. The general narrative was that OVRR staff disagreed with Dr. Hogue's assessment that the deaths were due to vaccine receipt. Some staff present who portrayed the incident as Dr. Hogue attempting to create a false fear regarding vaccines. I then asked OBPV to perform a detailed analysis of deaths voluntarily reported to the VAERS system in full interest of balance. Causality is easy to assess in a randomized trial, but with case reports, causality is typically assessed on a subjective scale. In this scale, ranging from certain to unlikely, certain, possible likely, and probable are broadly considered as related to the product. The team has performed an initial analysis of 96 deaths between 2021 and 2024 and concludes that no fewer than 10 are related. If anything, this represents conservative coding, where vaccines are exculpated rather than indicted in cases of ambiguity. The real number is higher. So what he's saying there is we are being conservative here with saying 10, at least 10. It's probably likely a lot more, but we're trying to give you a conservative idea of the ones we absolutely know. This is a profound revelation. For the first time, the US FDA will acknowledge that COVID-19 vaccines have killed American children. Healthy young children who face tremendously low risk of death were coerced at the behest of the Biden administration via school and work mandates to receive a vaccine that could result in death. In many cases, such mandates were harmful. It is difficult to read cases where kids age 7 to 16 may be dead as a result of COVID vaccines. This I'll wait. I'll say my comments. Did COVID-19 vaccine programs kill more healthy kids than it saved? We do not have reliable data estimating the absolute benefit, absolute risk reduction regarding severe disease and death in healthy children from vaccine receipt. OVRR and OBPV rely on observation cohort or case control data with notorious methodologic biases. FDA has never requested the manufacturers demonstrate in randomized fashion that vaccinating children improves these outcomes. The available randomized data in children is deeply limited and broadly negative for symptomatic infection, as discussed in prior AdComs. Furthermore, COVID-19 was never highly lethal for children, and now MIS-C has decreased drastically, and the harms to kids are comparable to many respiratory viruses for which we do not provide annual immunization. Comparing the number of kids who died from COVID against these deaths would be a flawed comparison. We do not know how many fewer kids would have died had they been vaccinated, and we do not know how many more kids died from taking vaccines than has been voluntarily reported. Instead, the truth is, we do not know if we save lives on balance. When it comes to vaccine deaths, VAERS is passively reported. It requires a very motivated person, often a doctor, to submit the information. The submission process is tedious, and most people who start the form give up along the way. I know this is true. I interviewed a veteran, an Army veteran, who was coerced into taking the vaccine and is now paralyzed. He's been paralyzed ever since he got the vax. He talked about, you can go back and watch that interview, how impossible they make the VAERS, the reporting system, and how you're not likely to get any help at all. In fact, they specifically, when they put this vaccine out, you know what the Biden admin did? They said, if there are any adverse effects or death, you can't sue the vaccine manufacturer. They gave them this unusual, basically, they blanketly said, you're not liable for this. They gave them this unusual immunity. And parents still did this. They still gave it to their kids. Anyway, many more deaths may be unreported. Finally, the FDA has failed to properly enforce many required post-market commitments for COVID-19 vaccines, including for pregnant women, and to document subclinical myocarditis. Putting these facts together, it is horrifying to consider that the US vaccine regulation, including our actions, may have harmed more children than we saved. This requires humility and introspection. Humility and introspection. Why did it take the FDA commissioner to identify these deaths? There is no doubt that without this FDA commissioner, we would not have performed this investigation and identified this safety concern. This fact also demands serious introspection and reform. Why were these deaths not actively reviewed in real time? Why did it take until 2025 to perform this analysis and take necessary further actions? Deaths were reported between 2021 and 2024 and ignored for years. I suspect the answer is cultural and systemic. I have no doubt that many vaccines have saved millions of lives globally, and many have benefits that far exceed risks. But vaccines are like any other medical product. The right drug given to the right patient at the right time is great, but the same drug can be inappropriately given, causing harm. The same is true for vaccines. The US government's coercive and unethical COVID-19 vaccine mandates in young people may have been harmful. In contrast, there is no doubt that an elderly, unimmune American benefited from doses 1 and 2 in 2020. The people who might have benefited most from vaccination were those too old to be affected by workplace mandates, another Biden administration blunder. Does COVID-19 cause more myocarditis than COVID vaccines? A perennial argument is that COVID-19, the virus, causes more myocarditis than COVID-19 vaccines. In fact, I heard this argument made inside Cyber recently when one company submitted their PMC. Here's why that argument is wrong. In order to study how often people who have myocarditis after the virus, you would want to collect everyone who got COVID and see how many get myocarditis. Yet studies on this topic don't do this. They take people who presented to healthcare systems and had COVID-19 and ask how many have myocarditis. But we all know most people who get COVID simply recover at home. People who seek medical care are the sickest ones. These studies, therefore, use a false denominator. Second, the demographic matters. I have no doubt that COVID vaccines were life-saving for an 80-year-old who never had COVID, but should a 20-year-old get his 6th dose this fall? These studies often fail to look at the balance in younger people. Finally, you still get COVID anyway. No amount of COVID vaccine stops a person from getting COVID. So the risk is not virus versus vaccine. It is vaccine plus virus versus virus alone. I am going to pause here and say, this is one of the reasons my husband and I chose not to get the vaccine, because the way I looked at it, I had not yet had COVID at that time when we decided we're not going to do that. And I looked at the symptoms and what we knew, what was developing, the problems caused by COVID. And then I looked at the problems that we knew that were developing, that we were those of us who were not in the cult media were looking at. What were the anecdotal evidence of what people were reporting from getting the vaccine? And we said, okay, well, I'm either going to risk getting COVID or I'm going to risk getting COVID and the risk that comes with the vax. He's putting it right out there. The risk was either vaccine plus virus or virus alone. I chose the risk of virus alone. Why? Because we were not in any of the age cohorts that were more at risk. We were not 80 years old and we didn't have comorbidities. We were not obese. We didn't have these other problems that they said maybe when you weigh the risk versus benefit, you would choose to take it. I'll continue. I am not aware of any analysis that does this right, and we have performed an empirical review of this fact. Thoughts on cyber staff who are leaking to the media. I have no doubt that individuals who are providing media outlets with slides, emails, and personal anecdotes believe they are doing the right thing. Unfortunately, this behavior is both unethical, illegal, and as this case illustrates, factually incorrect. COVID-19 vaccines did result in the death of children. Dr. Hogue was correct in her assessment. Any small differences in opinion about specific cases are due only to the fact that subjective attribution of death is inherently a topic where reasonable people may have subtle disagreements, but the overall order of magnitude and directionality show concordance between Dr. Hogue and longtime cyber staff. Doctors Gruber and Krauss resigned in 2021 as director and deputy director of OVRR. Finally, one fact that must be mentioned is that disagreements by my predecessor and career staff had led to resignations in the past. Doctors Gruber and Krauss ran the vaccine division for decades. They resigned over two issues. Dr. Marks insisted that annual boosters should be for all people, irrespective of age and risk. This is crazy. While Gruber and Krauss preferred a risk-balanced, evidence-based approach, and Dr. Marks pushed through a BLA for the COVID-19 shots, which permitted the Biden administration to administer unethical COVID-19 mandates. As a professor, I agreed with Gruber and Krauss. Furthermore, there have been prior cyber directors who have held this chair and had fundamentally different views. Some have felt the cyber director should override reviewers to approve gene therapies that do not work because of patient demand. When these products later result in post-market deaths, it is difficult to take corrective action. I favor approving products with benefits that exceed the risks. Incentive in vaccine making. It is well acknowledged that the FDA does not consider the cost of drugs in our approval decisions, and similarly, it is not our role to lower evidentiary standards or mask safety concerns to create artificial financial incentives to make vaccines. That said, there are unique financial incentives for vaccine makers. COVID-19 vaccines earned $100 billion globally. $100 billion. The annual U.S. vaccine market is estimated to be over $30 billion, projected to pass $50 billion in a decade, and a single new vaccine for pregnant women has industry analysts estimating $1 billion a year in annual returns. Additionally, vaccines do not go generic. There is no biosimilar pathway. You can't show your biosimilar vaccine has the same antibody titer and get approval. This means two things. Companies can expect long tails of earnings, and FDA acknowledges that cell and humoral immunity surrogates are insufficient for generic approvals, a position I agree with. The fact that we don't offer generic or biosimilar vaccines because no amount of cell or humoral mediated immune surrogates would mean that a product retains efficacy has a deeper logical conclusion. How can we accept such endpoints to approve entirely novel products? The path forward for cyber, OVRR, and OBPV. I want to outline a path forward. Our general approach in cyber will be to direct vaccine regulation towards evidence-based medicine. It's so simple and should have already been done. Vaccine regulation needs to be aimed towards evidence-based medicine. This means we will take swift action regarding This new safety concern, we will not be granting marketing authorization to vaccines in pregnant women based on unproven surrogate endpoints. Any prior promises will be null and void. And we will demand pre-market randomized trials assessing clinical endpoints for most new products. Pneumonia vaccine makers will have to show that their products reduce pneumonia. It's like we're in 2025 and we've been lied to, we've been cheated, we've been scammed, we've been betrayed by all of our institutions who have not done the job that they are there for, that we pay them for, that they take money out of our paycheck for. We're at a point where they're having to say, "Hey, if you're making a pneumonia vaccine, you're gonna have to show that it prevents you from getting pneumonia, like, that it reduced you're gonna have to show that it's a pneumonia vaccine." So they'll have to show their products reduce pneumonia, at least in the post-market setting, and not merely generate antibody titers. Immunogenicity will no longer be used to expand indicated populations. These populations should be included in pre-market RCTs. We will revise the annual flu vaccine framework, which is an evidence-based catastrophe of low-quality evidence, poor surrogate assays, and uncertain vaccine effectiveness measured in case control studies with poor methods. We will reappraise safety and be honest in vaccine labels. I look forward to hearing your thoughts on how to do this better. Additionally, at FDA, we have not been focused on understanding the benefits and harms of giving multiple vaccines at the same time. This is a concern shared by many Americans. The FDA standard has been to require randomized studies too small to draw any conclusion from, creating a false sense of efficacy and safety. OVRR and OBPV staff will be tasked with writing guidelines to reflect these changes, and the mission of cyber will change to reflect this worldview. Never again will the US FDA commissioner have to himself find deaths in children for staff to identify it. Vaccines will be treated like all other medication classes, no better or worse than AAV vectors, monoclonal antibodies, or antisense. I'm not even going to try to say that word. Oligonucleotides? I think that's it. Oligonucleotides. Insofar as vaccines have third-party benefits, and many do, these will be judged just like drugs may have third-party benefits. A person who takes an appropriate psychiatric medicine may be a better parent or spouse, but this requires data and cannot be assumed. I have seen no evidence that COVID-19 vaccines, which do not halt transmission, benefit third parties. I have no doubt that MMR vaccines do provide third-party benefits when administered to high enough fractions of society. Having said this, I remain open to vigorous discussions and debate on these topics, as I have always been. I am open-minded to modifications or alterations. As you can imagine, I believe these debates should be private, internal to FDA, until they are ready to be made public. I don't endorse selective reporting of our meetings and documents. Some staff may not agree with these core principles and operating principles. Please submit your resignation letters to your supervisor and CC my deputy, Catherine Cesarman. That's just awesome. Please, if you don't agree to these precautions, if you don't agree to doing science and being transparent in how we do it, you can leave. For those who choose to remain in cyber, I look forward to working with you, learning from you, discussing with you, and interacting with you on our shared mission to elevate vaccine science to 21st century evidence-based medicine. Vinay Prasad. There he is. This is the FDA. I'm pretty sure this memo was leaked. Like he said, there's leakers there. Um, Pretty big news. Yeah, based. If you if you don't agree in doing science, you can leave. Based. Okay. I'm gonna read just a couple of these comments, um, and then I have one final thing we'll look at. John Thomas for $5. Thank you, John Thomas, says you should do a simul stream with Alison Morrow, Rumble. She has done a lot of legwork on how doctors were targeted for dissent. Oh, John, if you think of it, will you message me this on X? Thank you. So I don't forget. I don't have my notebook to take notes in front of me. Thank you. John Burcham. Hey, John Burcham. Happy belated Thanksgiving. This is, you guys, this is from a person in the UK wishing us Americans a happy Thanksgiving. Thank you so much. And legalize adulthood for $50. Thank you for the generous super chat. Says, man, the time between conspiracy theory and proven fact just keeps getting shorter and shorter. Yes, it does. Speaking of, I did want to, in case there's any leftists watching, and this is all news to them, and in case they're shocked, and I wanted to just, again, I've mentioned this many times since the COVID years, but I'm just briefly, in case you're here from the left and this is a shock to you, I'm just going to tell you something else you need to read is the Lancet letter. If you don't know about the Lancet letter, just look it up. Read about Peter Daszak. I've always mispronounced his name, but I'm going to read just the basics from Wikipedia for you, and I'll show you a Vanity Fair article. We're not going to read the article. I'll show it to you. The Lancet letter was a statement made in support of scientists and medical professionals in China fighting the outbreak of COVID-19 and condemning theories suggesting that the virus does not have a natural origin, which it referred to as conspiracy theories. The letter was published in The Lancet on February 19th, 2020, and signed by 27 prominent scientists, gaining a further 20,000 signatures. The letter generated significant controversy over the allegations of conflicts of interest in its authors, most notably Peter Daszak, and his undisclosed relationship with the Wuhan lab, the Wuhan Institute of Virology, and the chilling effect it had on scientists proposing that the COVID-19 lab leak theory should be investigated. If you don't know about this guy, Peter Daszak, he's the one that organized all these scientists to put out this letter of scientists saying way early, and if you weren't in the cult and you weren't in the cult media, like, we knew about this back then. Again, many of you are very, very late because you've been stuck in your cult media programming, and you're like, what is the Lancet letter? This at the time was insane because he made these scientists, he's the one that organized them all signing it, and he made them, in the letter, they lied and said in the letter itself, none of us have a conflict of interest. Bullshit. Several of them had ties to the Wuhan lab. He had ties to the Wuhan lab. And they were the reason that a lot of the media at the time and a lot of the entertainers and late night hosts all were saying, oh, you're crazy if you think this might have come from the lab that studies COVID and biogenetically, like, engineers these viruses to be more contagious to humans and more harmful to humans. You're crazy if you think it came from the lab that does these things. It's just a coincidence that it originated in Wuhan, where there is a lab that does these things. It's a coincidence. That's why all the media ran with this whole thing, like, you're crazy if you're questioning where this came from. If you're crazy if you're saying maybe we should try and find out if there was a lab leak. Turns out that wasn't crazy at all. And now all of your leftist mainstream corporate media has admitted. Sorry, someone is calling me. Let me decline. Okay. All of our mainstream media has now admitted that it very likely came from the lab. That was after shaming us, lying about us, banning us, censoring us, calling us crazy conspiracy theorists for assuming the most logical thing, that, hey, it originated in a town that has this lab that basically engineers these kind of viruses. Do you think it maybe came from there? No, they instead wanted us to believe that it came from a nearby wet market and it just magically jumped several species and mutated, and then that's how it happened to occur there, which is just crazy. Do you know why Peter Daszak, however you say his name, do you know why he organized this letter? Because Obama had banned genetically modifying these COVID viruses. He had banned doing this kind of research at the National Institute for Health. He basically said taxpayer money's not gonna be spent on this. It's too dangerous to humans to be trying to create viruses that are more contagious and more lethal. So we're not gonna spend taxpayer money on this. Obama did this. Do you know what happened after that? Our taxpayer dollars were still funding this in Wuhan, in China, in places that were willing to continue studying this, even though we said we weren't going to. China was still doing it. And do you know how our money went from the National Institutes of Health to a company in New York run by Peter Daszak? Peter D. I'm just going to call him Peter D. This company in New York called Eco Health Alliance. Our NIH taxpayer money went to Eco Health Alliance, and Eco Health Alliance sent it to the Wuhan lab. So we were still funding this gain of function research that Obama had banned. We were still funding it. This is an article in Vanity Fair you should read if you're on the left, and you probably never read it, and you probably don't know about the Lancet letter, and you probably don't know about the NIH sending money to Eco Health Alliance and Eco Health Alliance sending it to the Wuhan lab. You should read this article. It's a Vanity Fair article. It came out in 2022. It's called "This Shouldn't Happen: Inside the Virus Hunting Nonprofit at the Center of the Lab Leak Controversy." And here's the subheading: Chasing scientific renown, grant dollars, and approval from Dr. Anthony Fauci, Peter Daszak transformed the environmental nonprofit Eco Health Alliance. It used to be an environmental nonprofit, okay? Eco Health Alliance transformed it into a government-funded sponsor of risky, cutting-edge virus research in both the US and Wuhan, China, drawing on more than 100,000 leaked documents. A Vanity Fair investigation shows how an organization dedicated to preventing the next pandemic found itself suspected of helping start one. And yes, Fauci's all over this. This is why Biden pre-pardoned Fauci for any future charges for any crimes that might be discovered that he was involved in. Crimes against the American people. You need to know about these things if you don't want to be fooled, manipulated, used again. If you don't want to be coerced and bullied and lied to. If you don't want to be convinced by liars and evildoers that you need to give your child an experimental shot when your child is not at risk. Yes, crimes against humanity, Davina. It's exactly what Fauci's guilty of. Randy Wallen. Thank you, Randy, for $10, says Curry and Dvorak of No Agenda were all over this from the beginning as well. They pushed their show out via Podcasting 2.0, and as a result, were never deplatformed. You ought to consider it. Thank you so much, Podcasting 2.0. Also, Randy, thank you, Randy, says, I feel bad for unaliving my pet pangolin. He was an SOB, but still he is missed. Good fertilizer for the yard, though. Pangolin. If this is a joke, a dark joke, I don't get it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. If it's not a joke, I'm sorry. It's probably going over my head. I'll have to think about that one. Okay. I'm gonna wrap it up here. I'll read one last chat. My husband's in the chat. I wonder what the NGOs and nonprofits, the money path was back to Obama after he banned gain of function research. He must have gotten a kickback. Yeah. Don't ask questions. Oh, thank you. That was the animal that what actually was the conspiracy theory was that COVID magically appeared in the same town in China that had a lab that studied COVID and studied, did gain of function research and tried to make these viruses more lethal and more contagious to humans. That the actual conspiracy theory was that that this virus just, like, magically sprung up in that town by coincidence in the same town that had this lab, and that it jumped several species in a wet market, and that's how it spread. I did not know that it was a pangolin, that was the animal they blamed. Pangolins were blamed for spreading the virus in the wet market, I see. I didn't know that. I didn't know what animals they blamed it on. I heard bat at one point. They look like a Pokemon. Well, yeah, and it would have had to have mutated and jumped, like, several species. It just the whole idea was preposterous. And remember, guys, those of us who were awake during the COVID years and never fell for this crap, remember how these people were the most sanctimonious and pretended like they spoke for science? These idiots. I'm not speaking to the people who were fooled and manipulated and recognize it and are dealing with that and getting past it. I'm talking about the sanctimonious morons, the ones who called us grandma killers, the ones who I can't tell you how many times strangers on Facebook and X, especially Facebook, would lecture us, would lecture. You'd have to have conversations with some of the dumbest people alive who thought that they were speaking science. And I just ah, remember those times? Whew. Anyway, I have mostly forgiven those people, mostly, but I will not forget. I will never forget what they did. We're gonna go out on this little video compilation. Here we go. This is a compilation of all of the headlines lying to us during the COVID years. Starting with this one, AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine 100% effective in preventing deaths and hospitalization. Here we go. In kids, 100% effective in kids. It's 100% effective, 99% effective, 90 oh, it's 98, now it's 97, oh, now it's 96% effective, oh, now it's 95%, now 94, now it's 93%, oh, now it's 91, 90, now it's 89% effective, it's still 87%, oh, it turns out it's 85%, it's 84% effective, it's 30, it's 81% effective. Now it's 79. It's 87%. Now it's 76% effective. It's 74%. Oh, it's 73%. It's 72, 71, 70. It's 69% effective. It's 68, 67, 65, 64, 63. It's 61%. It's 59, 58, 57%. It's 55% effective, guys. 53. It's 51% effective. It's 50% effective. It's only 47. It's 42% effective. 41, 40. It's 30% effective. It's only
you might need another shot. We've got to make sure we clarify that with people. It has nothing to do with whether or not it's effective.
Roosters.
We know it's highly effective. Highly effective.
There you go. I sound like an auctioneer. That's crazy, right? We lived through that. We lived through that, and if the billions of dollars worth of propaganda and censorship did not work on you, congratulations, you are in a very small cohort of people. And I mean, truly, you're the kind of people I want around me. And if you were fooled by it, you have to forgive yourself. You didn't do this. All of this money and evil. It wasn't you. They aimed it at you. You fell for it. And the best thing you can do is learn from it and be determined not to get fooled again. Thank you for being here today. I'll let you know if I'm streaming this week. I'm not sure yet. If I do stream, it probably won't be at the regular times because I'm doing some these live in-person interviews that we're pre-recording. I'm very excited about, but I will see you guys soon, and I hope you have a great week. Take care. Bye-bye.